Hi everyone, I'm Brianna and welcome to Roll Initiative. And today we're going to be talking about how you prep for a one shot. So let's get started. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind when you're running a one shot is that it's going to be much shorter. You're going to have to cut out a lot of the things that you generally allow in a larger campaign because you're just not going to have the time, such as introductions among the party. If you have them all meet up and accept their quest, then that can all take a lot of time. Whereas I like to start the adventure at the door of whatever dungeon or wherever the quest is, because then they can get right into it immediately. They can say hi and sort of get to know each other a little bit on the quest, or your players can just say that they introduced themselves on their way to the quest. But starting at the door of the quest is going to cut down the time a lot. You're going to have a lot more time for the actual adventure, and it's going to be a lot easier to balance the time of the rest of the game. I find it easiest to break down the game into 3 acts. The first is going to be getting inside or getting past the front door. It's going to be very much sort of getting in and getting a lay of the land. The second act is going to be finding and maybe even dealing with the target, such as an item you have to retrieve or even the main boss. I like to leave the third act fairly free, as then if anything goes overtime, you've got that little bit of extra room, or maybe you want to play something after they complete the main objective, such as they defeat the bad guy or retrieve whatever item they were sent to get, and maybe the dungeon starts collapsing. Then they have to spend the third act in sort of a race out. Or maybe you want to spend the third act as when they get back and talk about what they did and their reward, and have a bit of fun role playing as the heroes of the village. Though that is just what I like to do, a lot of people do use the third act for the mission objective, such as retrieving the item or defeating the boss. But I just really like having that little bit of extra room for if anything goes overtime or I want to do something fun after the main objective. During your prep, I think it's a very good idea to prep some extra rooms for the dungeon. Even though time is a really big thing in one shots, you're not trying to cut down the time as much as possible. You're trying to fit a certain time frame. So if your game is running ahead of schedule and you're going to finish really early, then it can be good to have some rooms prepped that you can slot into the dungeon to make it a little bit longer and add some fun little things for your party to do. The same goes when you're running out of time. Having the rooms that you can slot out to make the dungeon shorter so that it's just the bare basics of the adventure is really helpful. This gives you a lot more control over the sort of time that it's going to take, and it can be really helpful when something takes a lot longer or a lot less time than you thought it would. It can be really easy to stay on track when you're just in the rooms of a dungeon, but if your one shot is set in somewhere like a forest or a town, then it's going to be a lot harder to keep your party on a singular track heading for the goal. So, one of the best things that you can do to make this easier is to make the area small. If they're in a large forest, then focus on a small part of that forest. Maybe whatever is going on is only happening in a small section of the forest, or they know their target is in that small section. Then, hopefully, unless your party are too wild, they're going to stay in that small section that you give them. And that's going to make it a lot easier to keep the game moving forward because you're going to have a lot less distractions of a wider world. Now, combat is a fairly large part of D&D, but you don't want to have too much of it in your one-shot because it can also take a really long time. And you probably won't have enough time in your one-shot to run much combat as well as have a satisfactory story. And whatever combat you do have, you want to make as short and action-packed as possible. So I find it quite helpful to lower creatures' HP for one-shots, but raise their attack. That way they're still going to be a threat because they're dealing a lot more damage, but they're going to be much quicker to finish off. That way it still feels really high stakes, but it's going to be a lot quicker and you're going to be able to finish it up a lot easier. But there we go, that's the end of this video, and I really hope it was helpful and that you enjoyed it. And if you did, then I'd be really grateful if you'd consider giving it a like or even subscribing to my channel. But as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you next time.